Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Email me for pricing at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing one of the rarest modern Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso models. This is the Reverso Grande Reserve, and while the name might be suggestive of an upscale American malt liquor product, in fact, it refers to the extraordinarily long power reserve of the watch and one of the most inventive power reserve indicators of the 2000s from any brand. The watch uses the XGT case size that originally launched just prior to this model in the 70th anniversary Reverso, and this watch also uses caliber 874, which is based on the 70th anniversary Reverso's 8-day caliber 877, so it has an impressive pedigree. In a lot of ways, this is a more practical and durable version of the 70th anniversary watch, the 70e. Now, the XGT case was big for the time, but by the late 2000s, it would already be one of the smaller Reversos in the collection. So this is a very wearable watch in spite of being XGT in steel. It's only 46.5 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, 29.3 millimeters from side to side, not including the crown. It's 12.1 millimeters thick, and it has a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Again, the XGT might sound intimidating, but it's an absolute sweetheart. It's a great size. The timepiece is larger than the Grand Tie, but smaller than the Reverso 976. And you can really see that on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it wears beautifully. It's nowhere near the edges. You can see that even pulling the strap relatively tight, the lugs come nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and it is flat enough with a vaulted case flank to slide underneath the cuff. Taking a quick look at the strap, you can see it's a wonderful, seamless, light brown leather with a sheer cut side, and you can see thick layers of leather. It is designed by Casa Falliano. You see, this is the Casa Falliano collection, designed by the August Argentinian leather shop. Now, they do make some straps in very low volume for JLC, but they also design a series of watches called the Falliano collection, and that's what we have right here. The strap is actually made in France, according to Falliano Designs, by Camille Fournet, which is the OEM supplier to JLC for straps. It uses a pull-tab spring bar system that allows you to remove the strap without a tool, so you can quickly pop it off and swap straps or just clean between the lugs. We have a JLC branded stainless steel pin buckle. You can see have quite a bit of leather on this multiply layered Casa Falliano design strap. We also have recesses within the case band that allow the strap to insert into the profile and move without obstruction, despite the fact that there's no daylight showing between strap and case, so it's a very integrated look. The original Reversos were designed in 1931 for sporting activities. Back then, the crystal of a watch would have been made of glass, so protecting the crystal was a big deal. The idea back then was that you would flip the watch over, the reverse of the watch would be solid steel, so if it was going to get hit or knocked or scratched, well, in the process, it would protect the glass crystal on the other side. And then when the time came to read the time, you just flip your watch right back over. Well, through the years, starting in the early 1990s, JLC began elaborating and using the case back for either a second dial to show a second time zone, as with the Reverso Duo, or with secondary complications such as chronographs or power reserves that could be displayed on an opposing face. And that's exactly what we have right here. More on this in a moment. The first thing you need to know about this watch is that the Reverso is a surprisingly complex shape. It might just look like a rectangle if you've only seen photos of it online, but take a look from that angle. You can see it has a wonderful barrel-shaped vaulted case flank with these strakes or gadroons that are famous parts of the design and wrap all the way around the barrel of the case. We have these lugs that are actually conical in profile and squared off at their end. Everything is polished except the wells of the gadroons. We have a JL branded crown. The watch is 30 meters water resistant, which is standard for dress watches, but extraordinary for Reversos, as until the 1980s, no Reverso ever had any water resistance. Water resistance here made possible by an extraordinarily complex case that has 50 individual components. You can see internally it has engine turning, externally on the reverse side it has satination, and the feel of a Reverso case with the pin snaps that are included. It should always be smooth in its glide and then sharp in its locking action. It should never be tight. It should never be gritty. It should feel like the bolt of a high-quality rifle, and if it doesn't, it means the watch has probably been refinished and reassembled by unqualified people. The dial is very standard for a Reverso with one exception, and that is the off-centered seconds display. We have a sort of vogue or wave pattern stamped guilloche at center. We have a satination for the hour track. This is early Art Deco. And so we have very simple vertically arrayed lacquer transferred Arabic numerals. We have blued broadsword style hands. And then on the reverse side, we have this funky power reserve indicator. Now the watch is rated for 8 days of power reserve because dating back to the first third of the 20th century, JLC was famous for 8-day power reserve movements. Now starting in the late 90s, part of the 70th anniversary Reverso project was to design a Reverso movement with at least 8 days of power reserve. And in fact, they actually outdid themselves. For the 70th anniversary Reverso in its caliber 877, they wound up with a watch rated to 8 that will run for almost 10 before it stops. Now, the power reserve on this watch has a jumping indicator on the reverse side. It's a digital power reserve. 0 hours and 1 hour remaining are in red. It winds relatively quickly. I believe it only needs about 55 turns to fully energize it because JLC didn't want winding the watch to be a chore. So they designed this movement, which, by the way, later on was used by Panerai in the PAM 190 series. They designed it to wind relatively quickly. So unlike some watches with long power reserves, you don't need to wind it 100 or more times. And as you approach the top of the power reserve, the indication will transition from a number to a more straightforward indication of bum 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 up. It is now fully wound. Inside, you have a properly sized and shaped movement built for this XGT case, a caliber 874 manual wind twin barrels. Again, 8 days rated power reserve, almost 10 until it stops. It beats away at 4 hertz, which means they didn't use a low beat rate to make that long reserve. They actually packaged it brilliantly and give you a modern beat rate. It's got the power reserve indicator, and it has 25 pivot joules. It is a micro-mechanical work of art. And of course, this watch, extraordinarily rare, is the kind of watch I see maybe once every 5 or 6 years. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.